hop around on it just to get a feel for how, where the energy is with the audience. I wanted to start with our government. And this is probably the lecture that's going to get me in trouble, okay? I've been being watched since 1996. My phones have been tapped. Nobody's been bothering me too much, just monitoring. That's because I've been taking the spiritual end of things. And they figure, oh, just one of those new agers, nobody really listens to them, so they're not dangerous. They don't have that much information. They already know I have information. But interestingly, I haven't been speaking about the information the government doesn't want people to know about. This is going to be the first time I reveal some of this stuff. I haven't revealed it in New York yet, but that's due in December, because I have a big workshop planned there for December. We're going into a new millennium here, and it's about time we had a clue as to what's going on. Because we have been living under a lie. Not only since the 1930s, way back from the beginning of the seeding of our race here. For 200,000 years, certain things, certain factors were control factors in our evolution that were not intended to be a natural part of our evolution. We have been purposely made to be focused in a three-dimensional reality system, unaware of other dimensional systems. This has been done for repression of our DNA. We have DNA potentials that our scientists don't even understand yet. But there are certain beings that have visited here for millions of years that are very well aware of our DNA capacity. And that's why they've tried to repress it and suppress it. Because we have the ability to evolve beyond what they themselves consider themselves godlike beings. Well, we have the ability to evolve into such things. We have something in our DNA still. It was a gift that was given to us millions of years ago when we were first created as a species. It's called the silicate matrix. It's a 12-strand DNA code. It's in the morphogenetic template, the electromagnetic light-sound template that our DNA and our bodies are built on. It has been unplugged and not operational for over 200,000 years. We look at our history, and what we've been taught in school has so little to do with the reality of what history truly is. We have the Darwinian concept, and there's the concepts of, we were fish and we developed flippers and then we came out of the water. And all of these really interesting concepts because we have certain things in common with certain animal species. There are reasons for that because we were crossed with them at certain times and they were crossed with us, but that didn't mean we started there. We didn't. Our race was created 560 million years ago in literally a different dimensional field than what we're in right now, a higher dimensional field. We were an immortal race. Our bodies didn't decay and die like they do now. The silicate matrix gene code is a dormant potential within every person's body. Some people have more of it than others, and they're the ones that ETs want. When we have intruder ETs coming in here to bother people right now, they go for a couple of different things. One are called stellar substrand matrices in DNA. This is not in the books yet. This is new material. It's only been recently introduced in New York City. The stellar substrand matrices are extraterrestrial coding that appear in certain human gene codes. It allows them certain potentials to be taken through interdimensional portals without exploding, for instance. Because if you take certain coding, genetic coding, through a stargate, it will go into spontaneous combustion because it cannot expand on the morphogenetic level. Other gene codes are able to activate dormant coding and expand to hold the frequencies of the stargates. So when you're an invading ET race trying to covertly take over a planet, you want to create hybrids and you want them to have the highest coding possible. So they've been trying to trace family lines, trace them to find the ones that have the highest contents of the silicate matrix within the gene codes. Not just for hybridization, but because right now, because of the time period, we're back to that, stellar activation cycle, the people that have silicate matrix, more of it in the gene code, will begin to have spontaneous DNA activation because of the new frequencies that are going to be coming through the solar light spectrum. If that DNA activates, they become multidimensional people. They become able to see fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensional frequency bands, where our little manipulators like to play games. As long as we only see 3 dimensions, They can do anything they want from the fourth or anything higher. If our silicate matrix begins to activate in our gene code, which it will, as these vortices, 7 sealed on the planet, progressively open between now and 2012, we're going to be a real problem for any force that wants to control this place, because we're going to get wise really fast. They want to try to stop the activation of the silicate matrix. We're in a time period, it's so much like science fiction, it's hard to even speak about it because we've been so conditioned to science fiction that we can't deal with science fact, most of us. We can't deal with, on a real rational level, there's this big denial thing that happens, even with the most wanting to believe of us. If you will hit a level, you go, I can't deal with this. I have to go back to my job. I have to go see what's on TV tonight. I just have to ground myself and become just normal, just part of the program, like everybody else. Because when you start to see beyond the veils of illusion that we've been living here, you start to realize the manipulation that's taking place here. Part of the manipulation is ET manipulation, always has been. We don't know about them. Why? Because they didn't want us to, that's why. They didn't want us to know where they were or how to access them or to find out that we were being manipulated, because then they could manipulate us without any problem. So what we have to deal with in the next 10-year period, primarily, is not just ETs, it's our own governments. Our government, the United States government, became aware of the ET issue in the 1930s, not the 40s. They already had contact in the 30s. It was before Roswell, before any of that. There were treaties made between certain groups within the government. They wanted the ET technology. They were in the middle of wartime. They wanted as much advantage as they could. So treaties were made, and technology was exchanged, and we conveniently won the war. It wasn't by our own hand. There were technologies that allowed us to have the biggest and baddest weapons on the planet at the time. Unfortunately, it wasn't like you read in the history books. It wasn't solely the genius of our human minds creating wonderful war machines. We had a little help figuring it out. They came from the Zeta Reticuli. They're from the Orion star system primarily. That's where they originated, but they've also spread out into other systems, and they're interdimensional beings. They came here because they have an interest in what happens on planet Earth. They came here because they know about time cycles, and they know about stargates, and they know that ours was going to open, and they knew that would fire our DNA. That was going to cause a problem for certain control factors they have in 2 places. One is in a time space that's a little bit ahead of ours in time, where they are in control of human populations. And 2 is in something called parallel Earth. I don't deal too much with parallel Earth in the books yet because we have enough to deal with our own, but they're intimately connected. Basically, parallel Earth runs a bit ahead of us in time, and we are very, very connected with everything there. What manifests there will eventually manifest itself here, unless there's something done to change what's called a time vector. So we're going into a situation where we're dealing with parallel Earth, we're dealing with stellar activation cycles, we're dealing with ETs that most people don't know or acknowledge exist. We're dealing with so many things crashing in on us all at once, and so little time to learn what it means, where the pieces fit, and what to do, that it can be very intimidating. But it doesn't have to be. That's why I was given the information that I was given. If we can get out to as many people as possible knowledge of chelantic morphogenetic science, knowledge that you have a silicate matrix and you can do things consciously to activate it, which means you can begin to bring in higher levels of your own consciousness, which will set up protective bioenergetic energy fields, electromagnetism, in your fields that will block some of their electromagnetic pulse technologies. There are things we can do about what's happening. First, I'll tell you a little bit about what exactly is happening. Well, we have government suppression of high-tech data. Our government likes to tell us, wow, we learned to clone a sheep. I hate to tell you, they learned to clone more than sheep. And they've been doing it for about 15 years. They've had a lot of messes, too, in the process. Cloning is just a little thing they've been keeping away from us. They have also developed interdimensional technologies. They're aware of fourth dimensional frequency. And they're aware that there's about a 90-degree shift of angular rotational particle spin between here and there, and that by knowing that, you can create certain formulas that allow windows or portals to be forced open between our reality space and the reality space of fourth, fifth, and sixth dimension. Now, when I talk about the dimensions, I tend to talk about them in groups of three. That's because that's how they're structured. We are in a time matrix that is a reality field that's created out of 5 sets of 3 dimensions, 15 dimensions. There's not just 15 dimensions in the universe, in the whole galaxy and the cosmos, but dimensions run in sets of 15, and one set would be a time matrix. So our existence and a lot of others take place within the 15-dimensional system. The universes, they're called 5 harmonic universes. They have different angular rotation and particle spin. They take place in the same space, but they're invisible to each other. And the matter passes through each other because of the angle on the particle rotation. There's a lot of things that we don't learn in science class. There's a lot of things that scientists who discovered these things and tried to go public found themselves wearing cement slippers and having their careers destroyed and conveniently disappearing or dying of strange diseases. There has been a suppression of the fact that our scientists have found out a lot of these things. They have found out many things with quantum physics. They have verified the existence of certain places on the planet where there are stargates. They're trying to figure out how to open them. Of course, the Zeta won't tell them exactly how to do that. The Zetas know how to open some of them. We have been so lied to, it's enough to make me very, very angry. But anger isn't the only solution. It's a step in the right direction. It's the step after denial, after you get up, oh, I just can't deal with it. Just listen to these wackos talking about all this stuff, like they read too much, sci-fi or whatever. Well, I never read any sci-fi. I lived it, since the time I was 4. After denial, we may hit anger and fear. After that, there's called a step that's effective action. That's where you say, okay, I'm going to learn. I'm going to find out what I need to do. I'm going to assess the situation, and I'm going to learn to handle myself accordingly, not the way I'm being programmed by the government and the media and the whole program out there. I'm going to step outside that. You say, wait a minute, what are they trying to distract me from here? Our great life of what's on TV is more important than what's inside your being and your soul. This has been done on purpose. We have been cultivated to become a race that's focused out here because our power is in here. They don't want us to learn about our power. Our government doesn't, and neither do the ETs that are messing with our government. Now, we've had suppression of technologies of all sorts. A lot of this has started from 1940s on, when more aggressive treaties were formed. In the 1940s, there were literal agreements formed by certain world government inside leaders and the Zeta factions that said, yes, you can go ahead and abduct our citizens. Just make sure they don't remember and put them back. Okay? They didn't say don't hurt them. They didn't say, oh, that's not nice, that's violating them. They didn't care. We've been sold out by the people who represent us. What's new? I mean, if you think about it, is that so far-fetched? When is the last time that we, even in America, land of the free and the home of the brave and like our president and all that, when is the last time we could have really, really put 100% faith in the integrity and truth of our president or our political leaders? You know why we can't? The whole political system is structured in a way that if you're a nice guy, you can't get to the top. You have to learn to compromise and twist your priorities and do little things behind people's back just to get to a point where you could even be in a position of power politically.
Or you get killed.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Conveniently, hang yourself or shoot yourself or something. There's a lot of those. Oh, just couldn't deal with the pressure, commit suicide here, right? We are fed a lot of nonsense. And the scary part is, for generations, we've believed it. And we said, okay, well, the expert said it's this, so it must be this. We need to start becoming our own experts. Our lives depend on it at this point. Our government, as an entity unto itself, is not a bad thing. It's really composed of people like us, people that have been taught certain things and certain protocols more rigidly than many of us have, and it's been indoctrinated more heavily. They're people just trying to make a living, trying to do what's right, most of them. That's the ones on the lower to middle range. Even at the top, they know they have to do some dirty dancing just to keep themselves in position. But most of the leaders, at least in this country, have tried to serve the people in certain ways, while knowing they were serving a larger entity that nobody talks about. The larger entity is something that has been coined the world management team. It's an invisible entity, but it's an entity composed of humans. Humans that control, behind the scenes, major banking corporations within the worldwide network. They're multinational corporations with fronts all over the place. They have money from mostly black market dealings coming out their ears, so they can control and buy anybody or anything they really want to. Our political leaders here and in other countries have to kiss up to them, or they go away quickly. They find themselves vanishing out of power positions. The world management team has been here, it's actually been cultivated here for about 150,000 years. It's groups of family lines, human family lines, that were connected to Anunnaki family lines from way back when. The Anunnaki are primarily, they're a Syrian race strain. They're primarily on Nibiru right now. Our scientists haven't figured out that Nibiru, the planet, exists. It has a different orbital than most of the planets in our system. And it's not going to be back for probably about 3,000 years. So it's out of their range. But the forces there know how to use the interdimensional time portals. They manipulate here. There have been family lines created among us in human form that have more of a concentration of stellar substrand matrices within their DNA code. They are more Anunnaki than human. Some of them are more Nephilim than human. We'll probably talk about Nephilim a little bit here and there, I think. The Nephilim were a race strain that combined human and Anunnaki a long, long time ago. And they were superior to what the humans were at the time. And they tried to dominate the heck out of them. And they were kicked off the planet to allow humans to evolve. They didn't like the fact they were kicked off the planet. And they've always kept a vested interest here. We're dealing with people who look like us that are connected, and they don't even know it. They are connected to extraterrestrial family lines that have a vested interest in the outcomes of what takes place here. It's not as if this is a new battle. It's just not been a battle before because the humans have been asleep. So as long as they're asleep, you can put them where you want them and they can do what you want. We have a chance to wake up because for the first time in 210,216 years, I believe it is, we're hitting a stellar activation cycle. Interdimensional stargates are opening, and that's going to trigger our DNA. We have a chance to overcome the genetic blockages that were put in us so we could not access what's called multi-vector consciousness. Multi-vector consciousness will take us into higher dimensional fields of perception. It will open up simultaneous perception of various time-space locations. This is where all our stories of reincarnation and stuff come in. It's not exactly reincarnation. It's simultaneous incarnation. Time is simultaneous. It's laid out more like space. So you can go from here to here to here. Like you can go from New York to California. If you know the coordinates, and if you know the mappings of the time portal systems, and the time rhythms that are involved with each, because there are natural rhythms when portals open and close, when they dilate and contract. We're coming on a time now when, hurrah for us, there's a chance for us to really wake up, if we could get it before they try to talk us right out of our own awakening here. We can start to see what's been going on around us, and we can start to take charge. Somebody has to, or we're going to be in trouble. Right now, with the suppression of the technologies and the little doings with our government, with the Zetas primarily, they've been dealing with the Zeta Greys. There's an agenda behind this, and our government thinks it's just controlling masses of people for basically real estate purposes. They don't realize they've been duped. The reason the Zetas were here to begin with was not because they're a poor little race that lost its home and needs to fix its bodies. So can we please have some of your gene codes so we can, create healthy bodies for ourselves? This is the line of nonsense that our government bought when it sold us out. The Zetas knew all along. Yes, it wanted to make hybrids for infiltration purposes here. They knew that they wanted the territory. They were attempting to take over from the beginning. But our governments and the people who are so full of themselves that they actually try to betray a mass of people. They're so full of their own egos and their own greed that they would do something like that. We're very blind. They figured, they're just little gray dummies, and get their technology from them and take them for a ride. Our government's going to be taken for a ride, and they know it now. What's happened in the last couple of years is even the people out of the MJ-12 groups and the people out of the world management team are trying to find a way to run for cover because they lost control of the Zeta treaties. They lost control of what's happening here. The intruders will do what they want when they want, and they don't care if the government likes it or not anymore. Part of the reason things have become very hairy, and it's been recent, is because for a while it wasn't certain whether the stargates would open. So it was kind of like, well, everybody's getting in position, but we won't go for it unless they really open, unless they're going to open. Well, in 1998, with the opening of the Ark of the Covenant, which is a time portal passage, that ensured that we were going into the stellar activation cycle, and yes, those stargates would open. See, once you start the stellar activation cycle, which has already been started, you can't stop it. It will commence, regardless, and it will either go smoothly or badly, depending on the energy balances involved. Once it was known that the stargates were going to open, then all sorts of beings from various harmonic universes decided to get in on the Earth game. There's a lot at stake here, because we have something, we have a precious jewel that we don't even know we have. It's called the Halls of Amenti. They're stargates, but they're not just any stargates. They're stargates that link on a vertical rather than a horizontal plane through various different star systems, all the way up into the highest pre-matter dimensional fields. They're the ticket out of space-time. The intruder races, which their manifestation here has been very small comparatively. There's been major intergalactic problems with some of these races. And some of them are, that we usually refer to them as the draconian matrix, which is a whole bunch of different race strains that come out of one consciousness matrix. They have been wreaking havoc on galaxies within 3 harmonics for a very, very long time before we were created. They have always wanted control over this space-time system. If they can get control over the main vertical portal system, they can control any incoming and outgoing consciousness. They can basically create a little world unto themselves, a universe that's not connected anymore to the rest of the universal and cosmic scheme, in their own lack of understanding of what it means to have divine connection to all that is, in their own lack of spiritual understanding of what that connection means. They will make decisions like this that cause harm to many different life forms. So we have a little pot of gold sitting in the core of our planet that our whole history has evolved around. Nobody told us about it. The Secrets of Amenti, which is the name of book 2 in the Voyager series, begins to unravel the forbidden secrets of our evolutionary destiny. And I assure you, what is in that book is the truth. And I'll tell you why. Because I remember. It's not just because I was a contactee. It's not just because somebody just came down and picked me up in a spaceship and showed me some movies and told me this is how it was. Because they can do that and they can show you anything. I remember when I came in this time, into the baby body this time, I was fully conscious of fetal integration. I remember going from a 4th dimensional, non-manifest state of consciousness into fetal integration. I remember the process. I could describe it in detail to you. I remember where I was before that. And I remember many, many things that once you activate your DNA to the higher levels, you'll remember too. See, it's not just my memory. It's not that I'm somebody special or have a higher gene code and that I'm somebody elite compared to everybody else. I'm just an example. And the memory that I have is just an example of what's living inside each one of you. With the activation of the silicate matrix, you will find your stellar heritage, you will find your incarnational relationships, you will find your immortal self, who you were before you came here, why you came here in the first place. You'll find the parts of yourself where you made those decisions, because they exist. There are many wonderful things you can find. And that's what's wonderful about the stellar activation cycle that's coming. Though there's some scary stuff about it. It's really time for celebration. It's been over 200,000 years we've been trapped in these gene codes. We've been trapped in 3-dimensional consciousness, almost struggling to get out of our bodies, to the point where death is actually a relief, because you get to cross over and at least get off the tight clothing. You may have to come back, but at least you're free for a little while and you can think again. Because anybody that's done astral projection, or that's had a near-death experience, or that can get out there, out of the gene code a little bit, your consciousness goes, boom, wow, hyper-aware. You find levels of awareness that make you look very asleep here. And when you get really good at it, it's very hard to convince yourself to come back into the body because you realize what it does to you. We have a chance now to use the skills of our consciousness to expand the genetic potential of the body by calling into activation the junk DNA, which are the broken pieces of the silicate matrix. Science has discovered the junk DNA. They're the ones that call it junk. Just tell them that ain't no junk. It's important stuff. We can do this. The programs that we're putting together, I mean, I've just founded a temple. It's called the Azurite Temple of the Melchizedek Cloister. That will deal with the spiritual teachings and will also deal with direct transmission of certain morphogenetic codes that literally go from bioenergetic field of someone who has them into the bioenergetic field of someone who doesn't, and it gives them the coding where they can start stimulating into activation the silicate matrix. There is a roadmap to higher dimensional identity integration. It's been hidden here for centuries. Some of it was in pieces of the ancient mystical schools. Pharaoh Akhenaten used it in his ascension schools. Being called Jeshua 12, who got rolled into the character we call Jesus, he used it 2,000 years ago to ascend people. And ascension means raising the vibration of your body pattern into the next harmonic, where you disappear from here and end up there. And you do end up in a physical body in the next harmonic up. It's about half as dense as this one. Progressively, we evolve by activating the silicate matrix. We evolve from gross matter to semi-etheric matter to etheric matter to pre-matter liquid light, and then into waveform. This is the progression of going back into what we originally came out of, which was pure consciousness. This is what we always were. It's what we are now. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience, not the other way around. We need to relearn this. And I'm very, very grateful that I've been given the information I was given. And I was given it because I worked my way up for many, many different space-time placements. I have other simultaneous incarnations in what would be past incarnations compared to this one that studied and devoted their whole life to following a path of understanding these things. And then I went into teaching these things. And then I got to experience what it meant in 39 AD. I was a woman named Miriam, and I was half-sister of Jeshua 12, and we were Essenes, and we were teaching the Ascension program that is now being brought out through the Guardian material. And it worked. I actually did the full bodily transmutation. So when I talk about this stuff, I will talk with passion. I will talk with conviction, and I don't care who believes me or not. I'm sharing what I know is true because I experienced it. I walked it. I'm not some channel to somebody who gives me some information and I regurgitate it. I have the contact experience, I have the history here, but I have my own memory. So when I talk to you, I'm trying to talk to your hearts as well. Somewhere in each one of you, there is the memory of many, many eons here. Because you know what's funny? When we go back to the last ascension cycle, they call it stellar activation cycle, 216 years ago, it was a mess then. The dark side got control then. But the people that were there are the people that are here now. We're back, right? We just forgot who we were. And the ones that are remembering will begin to remember what went wrong at that time, so it doesn't happen ever again. We fell under the spell of the Draconian matrix 200,000 years ago. As a race, our DNA was altered, our consciousness was blocked, and we de-evolved and mutated into something that's nothing more than a little puppet on a string to those of higher dimensional reality fields. That is not our potential. That is not what we were created for. We were created as a guardian species. We were created as planetary guardians. We were created to stand as equals with the highest among the ET races. In fact, we were created as a vessel through which digressing ET races would merge their consciousness and take on a new form that would give them the codes that would allow them to go through full transmutation out of time and matter. We were created to be the genetic elite within most of the ancient stellar races. This is why some of those middle ground, middle harmonic universe stellar races do not want us to ever remember. And what's going to happen in the next 10 to 12 year period, depending on who wins this round, the majority of the people on this planet will either go upward into a very rapid acceleration of evolution, expansion of consciousness, activation of DNA, or they will go into mutation that after about 3 generations will completely dissolve the silicate matrix coding in the gene code. And they will become something different. They'll become an animal form that no longer has the potential in its given form to integrate higher dimensional awareness, to progressively transmutate out of matter. That's why it's so important that we pay attention. That's why I go around having conversations like this with people, and half the time, a good portion of the room is saying, boy, she's nuts. And it's like, no, I'm not nuts. I'm informed. And excuse me if people have a problem with that. This group is wonderful. There's an awareness here already. I can feel it with you. Even if some of the things I talk about are a little out there, there's enough cognition here where you're very close to finding a space where that could, you could probably deal with that being the way it just might be. Which means you're just getting ready to be open to learning what you can do to help yourselves, what you can do to help this planet. Okay? One of the things we need to be aware of, people say, there's no proof, there's no spaceships crashed on display out there, put them in Times Square so we see them and know they're real. Of course they wouldn't do that, they don't want us to know they're real. If we want some physical verification of ET presence and potentially threatening things that are going to be done to us, try to get us under mind control here, we have the HARP Project. Okay. See, they failed to tell the public some of the other little goodies that it can do. The HARP Project can directly use ultra-low frequency and different high-frequency interdimensional spectra to directly affect your morphogenetic field. It can cause illness if directed the way, in a certain way. It can cause mental illness. It can cut off your ability to bring in higher frequency. It can bioneurologically block your ability to bring in your soul and oversoul and higher self-awareness. If they told the public, not that they were planning to use it for these things or anything, but just the fact that this technology could do something like that, do you think in America we would have tolerated that? Do we really trust anybody enough to build something like that if they could really do those things? Of course not. They had to lie to us just to get it so we didn't rebel when they were building the facilities. There's a lot of things we weren't told. They're beginning activation of the HARP Project. They're also beginning activation of something called EMP technologies, electromagnetic pulse technologies. The ETs have given them enough understanding of grid mechanics, ley lines, certain electromagnetic fields that run in geometrical form through the literal rock of the Earth grid that connect with the magnetic fields of the planet. They have been learning over the past probably 30 years how to manipulate these things. They can, if they want to, create earthquakes. They can, if they want to, control weather patterns. These aren't fiction things. Our government knows how to do this. And it's been doing it in the test areas to see what happens. There are certain viruses being created on purpose to get rid of certain elements of the population that certain government people think are not welcome here. They're tests. And the more these tests work, the more confidence they get. Because what they want to do is basically get everybody corralled under control. It's called a frequency fence. Then they can weed out the gene codes they want and the ones that don't. And they can make the ones that don't want disappear. Right now, the ones the government and the ETs don't want too many of around are the ones with high concentrations of the silicate matrix. Because if too many of them activate at the same time, it's going to change the whole frequency for the race morphogenetic field, the 100th monkey syndrome. It'll flip it over for the rest of the people. None of them will be able to be controlled if enough people activate the silicate matrix on the planet. So right now, and this is stuff that's not in the book either, this is kind of recent things that were told to me. The agenda on the intruder side is to instigate a form of ethnic cleansing by having us kill each other. You know all our scenarios about Armageddon and World War III and all that stuff that everybody's getting a little nervous about because it's, year 2000 is coming up. Is it going to happen? Is something weird going to happen? Well, no, not in the year 2000. When we cross over there, we're just going to wake up the next morning and probably have a hangover from one heck of a celebration the night before. But there is a plan to use electromagnetic pulse technologies, run them through the grid and through the known electrical circuitry, because there's something called a phantom pulse. It is a pulse that's sent through the Earth core that has the ability to pick up any other electrical signal and run with it as a trace, as a phantom pulse. And they carry programs. They're almost like floating digital programs. When those floating digital programs come through, I mean, we're getting beamed with electricity from everywhere we turn. There's wires everywhere, there's lights everywhere. Your toaster becomes your enemy in this case. Unplug that thing. These electromagnetic pulse, phantom pulses, move into the human bioenergetic field. We need to realize that we are made of energy. We are electromagnetic phenomena ourselves. And we extend far beyond just the matter part of that. Our bioenergetic fields, we have a chakra system, we have an auric field, and we have something called a morphogenetic field, which is the core level. It's called the Cathara level. And we get into the teachings of that. These are the levels of energy upon which everything else is built. These are the levels of our being that get affected by ultra-low frequency pulsing, by phantom pulsing. And there are beings who know how to use this pulsing to get exactly the results they want. The pulses, and they have started this. They started it in August. Actually, they started it in Kosovo. It was a test to see if they could stir up tensions by causing electromagnetic irritation in the auric fields of certain groups of people. It worked. There's a mess over there. That was just a test. In August, they sent pulses out in the U.S., 3 of them. They will build. They don't go out instantly. They build as a charge of tension, a static within bioenergetic fields that registers in the emotional body and the mental body, makes people uncomfortable, and they get more irritated. Now, you combine that with the opening of seals, planetary vortices, the planetary chakra system, 7 seals. We're coming up between January 2000 and 5/5/2000. The 4th vortice, which is the one that lets in V4, 4th dimensional frequency, is open. That's going to put a real frequency blast behind the pulsing that's being sent out. It's going to amplify the programs. It's going to amplify the tensions. On November 18th, they have the next pulse scheduled, and that's for the Jerusalem vortice. They already don't like each other a lot over there. It's never peaceful over there. They don't need any help. And then in December, on 12/12, they get my workshop in New York, they're going to be doing one in China. They are setting the stage to create that what will happen over the next 5 years or so will be mounting of tensions within the political arenas that would culminate into us doing an ethnic cleansing on ourselves. They're confident that this would work because among our people on planet Earth, who we all share a certain element of the same gene code called the Turanician gene code, which is the original human, there are certain factions that have more ET gene code, that have more what's called Black Sun gene code than Diamond Sun gene code, which is the silicate matrix. There are legions of human beings that are impulsed through the intuitive facility by those matrices of consciousness. By creating wars, and this has been done in our history over and over, whenever there was a concentration of Diamond Sun, silicate matrix, family lines, they would instigate trouble, and they would call in their own human legions to make sure they killed as many of them as possible and shut them up. Whenever there were books written that told the whole truth, that told the true ability of the body to ascend, not just how to worship some God outside of yourself, I mean, that's fine, God's great. But there's more to your relationship with God than simply praising a priest. In other words, you don't have to have a priest to be your intermediary. There were teachings that were put here that were beautiful, that allowed a human being in one lifetime to make a full connection to Source, to integrate its soul, its oversoul, its avatar, and its Rishi identity, because the levels of identity you all have. You probably don't know right now. And in that process, the silicate matrix activates, and you progressively work yourself out of the time cycles of lower dimensional fields and into the high ones. This was here at certain times, and whenever enough of the knowledge got out, The other side would come in and make sure the people carrying that knowledge disappeared. Made sure they didn't have a very strong hold here where their children could be born to pass on that knowledge. And they made sure that books were twisted, if not just destroyed. It's going to happen again if we don't wake up. If we don't realize this isn't funny anymore, this isn't Stephen King, this isn't Star Trek, this is planet Earth coming out of centuries of subtle mind control beginning. It's so amazing to some of us to think that we could be going under mind control. No, not us, especially in America. We're free here, you know, nobody messes with us here. Think about it. Are we free? Do we know anything, really? We know what we're told. We believe what we're told to believe. And we're taught to not question and simply follow authority. That's a very subtle way of mind control. If you want to control somebody, you don't hold them like this, as any of the communist nations show, you know, that does create rebellion because if you're outwardly controlling someone, they will try to fight for their freedom. Unless you totally repress them and they just give up their will to live or be. Here, you give them enough rope and themselves. Just let them play. Let them think they're free. Then we can do whatever we want behind their back. Keep them distracted. Keep them into consumerism. Buy more, get more, you know? Keep them into all that distraction stuff. And you can do anything you want to do behind their backs and over their heads and under their noses. That's exactly what we have been raised in for generations. But there's enough awareness coming to the planet now. And awareness is a frequency. Everything is a frequency of energy. A pulsation pattern, a rhythm of energy. Every word I speak has an energy signature to it. So we're dealing with frequencies of awareness now that are birthing into this planet that haven't been here in a long time. We can get it now. I look at the people in this room, and this is a great room. I've gone to smaller groups like this before, and kind of walk in and go, oh no. You know, here we go. We have to deal with just real nuts and bolts UFOs. Well, there was a sighting here, and here's a film of it. It's a light in the sky. You know, this group is much past that, and I'm very happy for that because you can understand what I'm talking about. The general consciousness of this group, you do get it. You get it already. I'm just kind of maybe voicing and focusing a little, what you already know and sense within yourselves. So that's great. But we understand each other. We have to look out for things like art. Yeah, what are we going to do about it? Go up and sit down the thing and threaten to blow it up. That's going to do us a lot of good, Yeah. That won't help. We can help with things like that by learning the mechanics of our bioenergetic fields and learning how to block stuff like that from affecting us. Then, if we get really good at it, we can start doing what they do, which is remote viewing sabotage on people. We can learn to do that. If the government can train their little groups of people to do remote viewing, and not just viewing, they don't just view, they go in and they manipulate. They know how to access people's fields from the astral level. They can monitor, but they can also impulse you with their own thought patterns to do what they want you to. And they've been using this for about 20 years, actively. There are people that come out and talk about this, about the remote viewing and stuff, that were right in the middle of it. People that were in the military, that were in these programs. And then they come out of them and they try to talk about it, and the military really tries to shut them up very quickly. It doesn't, I don't know if anybody that's been killed for it, but they try to discredit them and make them look like loonies and deny the existence of the program. Well, I tell you, these programs are real. I've seen them because I'm trained in remote viewing. I was trained by the Guardian Alliance in remote viewing. And what I saw scared the heck out of me. Because there are government guys running around in the astral, in their astral bodies. Groups of them, manipulating groups of humans. It's bad enough we have interdimensional ETs that have all this ability. There are humans that have this ability too, and they are trying to mess with us. Sometimes fighting fire with fireworks. We're in the middle of a war for our consciousness, and we don't even know it. We walk around, everything's peaceful, no bombs are flying, it seems very fine. If you turned on your fourth dimensional perception by activating the fourth DNA strand, you would go to New York City and see it looks like a parking lot for spaceships up there. You would go into certain areas and you would see things that would terrify you that are here. It's kind of like what you don't see, I just hurt you. It's time we learn to see. We have the ability to open our eyes. That's what the programs that we're working to do, the spiritual programs. That's why we went spiritual on it. Because it's not going to help to get people all stirred up and scared. Certain groups are ready. for the big time stuff. Other groups just would go into total terror and fall apart, knowing that we have been deceived, we are in the process of being deceived, and we're in the process of an attempted mental takeover. We can fight it. This group knows this. There's enough strength here. There's not fear here. Other groups that I've gone to, you know that if I said these things to them, they would just fall apart. They would go home, oh my God, it's like take a number for the local shrink office, because they would all be lining up because they would be in terror. So I don't give that information to them yet. What I do first is I teach them about their own interdimensional parts. And I teach them about something called Hoover bodies, which are three-dimensional electromagnetic grids that we have sets of, that when you integrate them, they're scalar fields. When you integrate them, they progressively activate the DNA and open the awareness to higher and higher dimensional fields. Ascension is really not that hard. It takes time to get the gene code that's been dormant for so long into activation, but it's not that hard. That's the silly thing about it all. Everybody's made such a big to-do about it down here. Everybody trying to hide what it was really about. There is a roadmap to integrating your higher level identity. Integrating your higher level identity will change your electromagnetic fields. It will also change the constitution of your body form and your consciousness. That is what will protect you. All these technologies that the ETs are trying to use on us, and the government's trying to use, these are baby toys when it comes to real higher dimensional consciousness. They're little baby toys, but to us they're massive and huge because we've been denied even that much knowledge. If we can learn something that's called, people love this term, they either love it or hate it, Christ consciousness. Oh, the big term that the New Agers like to throw all over the place until you get nauseous. Christ consciousness is a real thing. They call it Christ consciousness because Joshua 12 came to model it for us. It's the full activation of the 12-strand silicate matrix DNA. That's what it is. And that's done by a bioenergetic process that once upon a time was taught in the ancient mystical schools. But that knowledge was taken away from us because why? It gave us power. If we have the power to expand ourselves out of the phase lock our bodies are in, we're in phase lock here, electromagnetic phase lock, into 3 dimensions. We can expand beyond that. The ones that are manipulating from D4 are not going to be able to manipulate anymore. We have the ability to evolve beyond their manipulations. And they're scared of that. Because they've been doing this for a long time, and if we figure it out, they kind of think we'll be like they are. And if they figured it out, they'd want to destroy us, But unfortunately, it wouldn't go that way. Because at heart, the human species is a Christed species. It was created through the 12-strand silicate matrix, through 12-dimensional consciousness, with the ability to access 15-dimensional consciousness and beyond. With that comes an understanding of love and an understanding of helping and forgiveness, which is something those middle-level races that are in the middle harmonic universes don't all comprehend. They don't know how to love, so they know how to fight. Ideally, if we pull through the challenges that are happening right now, which we will, it says so, we're supposed to win this round. Even the ancient texts say that. They got the first cycle, we did this one. If we get to a point where we can block some of the things that are trying to be done here, hit critical mass where, okay, say the frequency fence won't go up, we have a chance to totally transform, with this knowledge, totally transform everything on this planet the way it's known, to build a new type of civilization. It's built on awareness and true brotherhood. It's going to be our job to do this, unfortunately. It's like after all this, you just want to lay down and go, we got to take a vacation for a few centuries or something. When the ideas that are being presented through materials like the Voyager's material, when they begin to really integrate, there's a lot of work to be done. There are a lot of people who would sit there and either go into terror at this information, or they would go into total denial and rejection if they're programmed to do that. The ones who get above those old programs, those old paradigms, who would start to see their own multidimensional reality, and start to experience their own higher parts, are going to have to help lead the ones that don't see it yet, to help them heal. And a lot of them are going to come through kicking and screaming. It's finding a posture of how to help others without succumbing to what they're throwing at you. The people in the interior government, right now, talk about getting their karma back, they're terrified because they betrayed their people for greed. And the ones that they trusted are now betraying them. And they're terrified. What's happening right now is the Zeta factions that these agreements originally started with, since it became known that the portals were opening, the time portals were opening, the stargates were opening, there's other forces that have joined them now. There's something called the Dracos race. The Dracos are hybrids. They're created about 1 million years ago by combining something called the Dracon from the Orion system, which are very, actually dragon-looking reptiles, combining them with human forms, where you get kind of a more reptile than human, but it doesn't look like a dragon. It looks, walks upright and that kind of thing. They were banned here along with the Nephilim about 1 million years ago, right after they were created, because they tried to take over. They have a vested interest in here because they've always felt, excuse me, you guys fell to that planet. That's not your planet, that's our planet. We were created there, you weren't. They want it back, and they want access to the stargates. They've joined forces with the Zeta. And what the Zeta don't get yet is if you trace the future timelines, they're going to take over the Zeta too. They're just using the Zeta to get in here. So the Zetas, some of them figured that out. In the 1980s, some of them asked for amnesty from the Guardian groups. Just to get us out of here. This is going to be bad. And, we're sorry if we really messed up and we're messing with your people, but we'll fix the damage we did, but get us out of here because they're going to totally destroy us. Yes, they are. So we have something called the Dracos Zeta resistance, or the Zeta Dracos resistance, whatever you want to call it. They're resisting any of the Guardian race's attempts to help them solve their problems without inflicting themselves on another race. They want the territory, they want to do it their way. We are dealing with them. Our government is dealing with them now. And the government was prepared to maybe deal with the Zetas and the Little Grays. It is not prepared to deal with the Dracos, nor the Nephilim, nor the Nibiru ones, the Karndara from Nibiru. Karndara are a Dracos Nephilim hybrid. They're very nasty. They're very powerful, interdimensional metaphysically speaking. They are avatars. An avatar is a 12th dimensional consciousness, 10 to 12 actually. They can't go all the way up to 12. Only the light-coded ones can do that. But they go up to 10. They're a 10th dimensional consciousness. I mean, we're a 3-dimensional consciousness right now, so you can imagine what that might be like. They're interested now. We are literally sitting in the middle of what's going to become Avatar Wars. And unless we start becoming avatars and getting ourselves together where we handle our fields, we're not going to have a lot of control over what goes down here. We can all become avatars because every one of us has a level of our identity. It is an avatar. The portions of your identity that are stationed in dimensions 12, 11, and 10 are considered the avatar identity, the Christ itself. The frequencies of your consciousness that are part of your morphogenetic field. They're literally composed of particles. Morphogenetic fields are composed of particles called part A, part Chi, and part Cum. They're ultramicroparticles our scientists haven't discovered yet. They will eventually. This is what the tangible structure of the soul is about. We're showing you, and showing science, high science, where the soul is an actual part of the human anatomy. And it's made out of the same substance that this is. It's just oscillating at a different frequency. All right, so the programs that are presented here are intensive. I have so much information I could probably talk to you for the next 12 hours and still keep going. I'm willing to do that. It's scary. My first workshop, I was like, I've never spoken in front of a group before. Yeah, I don't know if I can do this. And the first one was like a 2-hour lecture and then a 4-hour workshop or something, back to back. And I actually did it. And the second one, I just went for 8 hours. I was like, ooh, it just comes natural. So I just I'll go on a flow and just flow with what seems to be the next thing to say. It's the right thing. If I were going to teach you any one specific thing, say, teach you your tangible structure of the soul, teach you how to use Keylontic science, teach you exactly what they're doing with the Montauk portals now that they're reactivating them, they're trying to connect them to Giza, which is something I didn't touch yet. All of these things, each one of these little subjects could be talked about for 8 hours. Each one could be a book. We don't have time to make all these books, to publish all these books. What I'm going to try to do, I think, for this group, I'm going to sum it up with a little bit of my personal experience. I just want to look through here and see if there's anything that I missed. I jumped around all over the place, which I do a lot. When I use the Mylars, I tend to format it, for what's going up on the board. That keeps me on certain lines. That's not always good. It's better to have an associative process happening, where we talk about this, 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 and this, and then bring it into a picture this way, rather than just a linear thing. So I'm appealing to the feminine nature, the intuitive nature, in talks like this. But I do like to at least bring it into a logical sequencing also. So let's see if I missed anything that's real important to hit on. I'll take questions after. I'm going to save time for that if there's time. How long have I been talking? I don't even
There
know.
will be time.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay. One thing, I've mentioned it a little bit, but I haven't given you a lot of information on it. It's something that on a personal level, even if we didn't have to deal with ETs, you need to be aware of. We're entering a stellar activation cycle. It's going to affect your DNA. Now, there are mutations in everybody's DNA from what's been done to us by manipulation historically from the ETs. There are ways to straighten out those problems. You don't need science and laboratories to do it. There's an intrinsic process of consciousness using chelantic science that you can reformat the scalar grids that the DNA is built on. If it's not done, like if there's a time to get spiritual and really take it seriously for once, this is it. Because if your bodies happen to have a gene code, and nobody knows what's in a gene code right now, we're just getting information on how to even look for something like that. There's a condition called molecular compaction that can take place if the morphogenetic field is blocked in certain ways and cannot expand to hold higher frequency. Now, we've already had 3 vortices open on the planet. 3 the seals have released. They're the ones that correspond to dimensions 1, 2, and 3. The reality field here is made of first, second, and third dimensional energy pulsation. No big deal. No major things. It's accelerated certain things as far as weather patterns and things, but it's not created any major mess. It's not affected our DNA that drastically either, because we're dealing with 3-dimensional frequency. Beginning on January 1st, we begin a cycle of every 4 years, another vortex opens till we get 7. We have one in the year 2000. That's the ESA vortex. We start to get 4th dimensional frequency coming into the grid. It starts to stimulate our 4th DNA strand, because the DNA strands are great. The whole thing is so beautiful and eloquent. We have 12 dimensions. Each one of the DNA strands is keyed to one of those dimensional frequencies. So, as we start to have 4th dimensional frequency come into the planetary grid, it will start triggering activation of the dormant 4th strand codes. That's great. That'll help you to develop astral projection and all of those things very easily. If you don't have distortions or blockages in the top of the 3rd strand or in the 4th strand, if there are blockages there, they will be manifested in the DNA, also in the body systems that are built on the DNA. Those areas will not be able to absorb that frequency. So, if you look at a morphogenetic field, which is a very good way to look at it, as a crystalline structure, let's say it was a quartz crystal. You know how they come in clusters with all little points? You can envision your morphogenetic field like that. Now, frequency comes into the morphogenetic field from the higher dimensional morphogenetic fields, moves in, and as long as it can move through those crystals, everything is fine. It actually expands the crystals. That's how growth occurs. But if there's something in the formation of those crystals, in the shape of their geometrical relationships, where certain wave patterns can't enter, those frequencies coming in become like a hammer on the crystal. And if you hit a quartz cluster hard enough with a hammer, it shatters. This happens to the morphogenetic field too, personal morphogenetic field. If you are exposed to high frequency scalar waves from interdimensional fields, like people that do time travel and Montauk boys, all that kind of stuff, they all have morphogenetic field damage because of genetic blocks that did not allow the morph field to expand enough to handle those new frequencies. It's going to affect all of us differently because we all have a different level of the silicate matrix in the DNA. The more silicate matrix you have, the more flexibility in the morphogenetic fields you have. So the more your DNA will activate and sequence itself to be able to handle the new frequencies. There are certain things we all share as far as blockages in the DNA. These can be changed. There are certain what they call seals that we put in. They're morphogenetic frequency seals that we literally put into the race morphogenetic field to block certain abilities from us, to keep us 3-dimensional. We can learn to release them in our own bodies. This will begin the process of preparing our bodies to handle the new light spectrum that's coming here. And it's funny, the scientists already know the solar light spectrum is changing. I know there's a guy, Val Valerian out of California, or no, Washington State. He has a huge website. If you want to know how bad it really is, I don't have his address with me, but you can probably find it by scanning for the name, by putting the name into a search. Val Valerian, I believe it's Valerian,
Yes.
I think.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. He's got a lot of information on the nasty stuff that's going on. I try to focus on the positive stuff. I'm not going to tell you how bad it is unless I can tell you what you can do about it. You know, why bother? I'm just going to get people upset so they can be miserable for, the last days. It's not our last days. This is the first days. We can learn to protect our bodies because there are going to be certain effects. It may be an acceleration of physical disease in the bodies. It may be a remanifestation of diseases we've overcome.